Welcome to the LA Insider, the podcast that takes you inside the neighborhoods of Los Angeles through the voices of the people shaping them. I'm your host, Jason Anderson, a real estate agent in LA and your guide to the stories behind the city. Each week I sit down with local entrepreneurs, community leaders, and business owners to uncover what makes their corner of LA special, from hidden gems to big ideas and neighborhood-changing insights. We'll also explore the path to success that brought each of my guests to where they are today, their challenges, wins, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're exploring where to live, grow a business, or just want to understand the real LA, this show is for you. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the LA Insider. Today we're spotlighting another incredible person who's making a real impact in his industry. So let's dive into his story. Today we're going to welcome Nicholas Tana. Hello, Nicholas. Welcome.
Hi. How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Nicholas is a Disney published author, an Amazon award-winning filmmaker, and the CEO of Smart Media LLC. With his unique background that blends the creative world of Hollywood with the trenches of corporate America, Nicholas brings a fresh perspective to modern-day survival. He's the writer and director of the cult comedy horror film Hell's Kitty, which features some of the biggest names in the horror genre. His work, including his popular blog, corporatezombiessurvival.com, is centered on the idea that the biggest threats aren't ghosts or monsters, but the draining, mindless forces that exist in our daily lives, the corporate zombies. So Nicholas, before we get started, I know everyone watching is going to want to know what is corporate zombies. So please start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, corporate zombies are everywhere. There may even be a little corporate zombie in you and I. Basically, a corporate zombie is a person who has lost their consciousness on some level, where they're going through the motions. They're reacting. They're not proactive per se. They're reacting to their environment. They're driven primarily and only by fear. Fear has overwhelmed their decision-making. They're trapped in a consumer cycle where they confuse needs and wants. And they have a hard time distinguishing with emotional intelligence. They have a hard time really understanding the ability of empathizing with others and leaning into their creative qualities, the human creativity. They're more derivative. They mimic, they confuse that with true creativity, and they lack imagination.
Okay. I could totally understand what you're talking about there with people that I know, places that I've been for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to do is let's start out by getting your story on what led you to even come up with the term corporate zombies. Where are you from?
Originally New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. And then when did you come to California?
I moved to California about 13, 14 years ago.
Okay.
And started in Los Angeles for film and television, worked mainly in that arena, but also worked as a journalist and have found my way into project management and consulting in business and training, and where I was able to apply those same skills as a filmmaker, a writer, and musician sometimes to helping in the corporate arena. And eventually I've seen the evolution where there's really no distinction. I've worked for most of the major studios. They are as corporate is. So whether you have a job at one of the major studios in Hollywood, or you have a job for a utility company, I've worked for both in both industries and many others, you notice patterns. And it's sort of a systemized way in which business is done. People fill certain roles that are emulated in the various industries, and they start to think in a certain way. And with those categories and ways of doing business also come its weaknesses and restrictions.
Sure. So to get yourself to where you are and what you were doing, did you have to study something specific?
Yeah. So in terms of filmmaking, I really dove into understanding writing and script making and production and post-production. I got my start while at college working as a production assistant for PBS. So I was a paid intern, and went through everything from studio makeup up through pretty much character generator stuff to changing camera, studio camera, remote camera, and right up through directing, and then worked my way up in my first paid role after college for ESPN as a production assistant and eventually associate director and international. So that's where I got my production background. In terms of the more business side and the corporate, I've also studied programming languages. I've studied and trained in project management. I've also just gleaned information over time, just doing things and working with various apps that are used, and really learned the business side of things and how you can apply that and merge that with my ability to do multimedia storytelling, movie making, et cetera.
So what was your major in school?
I started pre-med and then switched over to being an English major. And so I have an English major and a dual minor in business and in Spanish. And it's in the minor in business where I really started realizing a lot of the beginning entrepreneurial spirit that I had, where how business actually applies to what I can do with my craft and how it applies to the entertainment industry, which is where I started.
Sure. So you got your taste of entertainment industry as your PA job at PBS. Where did you go from there?
So after graduating, I took a few odd jobs before I was able to finally get in through a Kelly Temp Services, stuffing envelopes in the HR department of ESPN. And I speak several languages. I can speak Spanish and Italian and English, a little bit of English. And so with that plus the background for PBS, several years in production, I had a lot of skill sets to be able to get into television production. And that's where I still struggled to get my first job at ESPN. I had to take a job stuffing envelopes in an HR department on a temp assignment. Basically gave the same spiel I'm giving to you about how do you get in, this is what I'd like to do. Back then you had resumes. I had one ready, handed it to the person I was working with all day in the trenches, got a call the next day, worked in. I came in on an entry-level production assistant job, but I had already 2 years real-world experience working for PBS. So I quickly was able to rise up the ranks and become an associate director for them within, I think, the first 8 or 9 months, I believe. Wow. And so that was how I kind of got my start.
Okay. So if I remember, it goes production assistant, then production coordinator, and then what's in the middle there between what?
It was really production assistant, right to associate director, actually, it was the peak that I went into. But again, I had a lot of already experience where the role was production assistant, but as an intern, you get to wear a lot of hats. Oh, yeah. And they like to really leverage you too. So, and PBS has a lot of funding issues too. So I did a lot more than production assistant, actually. I was even writing promo spots for them at some point. You get to play and get into what you really want to do when you're working as an intern often, or at least that's what it was for my situation then.
Yeah, I think you can make those opportunities for yourself. You just look for them.
Yes, absolutely.
So where did you go from there?
So from there, I got to the point where I was working crazy hours, 4-hour turnarounds sometimes. We did not have a union, and I would work on a show, and sometimes I'd have to do French Open at 4 a.m, and I would finish baseball innings at 10 p.m, and it was just crazy turnaround. But I wanted to make movies, and I just didn't have the time working in TV production and specifically in sports. So I started my own production company and wanted to start doing my own thing, and I quit. I just actually quit. I was talking to a friend who was saying, you have a dream job and you're like 24 doing this. I mean, so many people would want to take your job. Are you crazy? Complaining about not having time. And I thought to myself, you're right. I'm going to quit because why am I taking up this position for a myriad of other folks that would love to have it when I don't see myself here anymore? I want to move it to a different direction. And so I took that risk and I did quit and started a production company. And that's when I started getting a lot of jobs doing sports related things for Madison Square Garden, because that's what I had on my resume. So they're not going to hire you if you haven't done something else, even if that's what you want to do. They're going to hire you based on what you've done. So I was still doing the same thing, but the only difference was I was calling my own shots and setting my own time. But with that comes advantages and disadvantages. I also had to worry about getting paid sometimes 60 days out for that first check and pick up insurances on my own and do all these other things that one has to do. I imagine like real estate agents, you're your own contractor. And I continued to do it though, because I like the flexibility. And then over time, started noticing as I was doing these things in production, slowly through word of mouth, I would segue into other areas, from doing infomercials for the medical field to doing training videos for the tech field. And it continued over time. And I've now worked for probably over 30 plus Fortune 500 companies and in a myriad of smaller ones, and been doing this for a really long time, simultaneously creating movies, production, have a couple movies on Amazon, writing for Disney. So I've managed to merge those two worlds for decades.
And you still have that same production company?
I do. Yeah. I have that same production. I've moved it a few times. Location. I actually originally opened it up in at the time I was living in Connecticut. That's where Bristol, Connecticut was where ESPN was. But I moved it to Arizona for a bit. And then most recently, about a year ago, moved it to Redondo Beach, California.
Wow. What's it called?
Smart Media.
Smart Media. So it seems like the going from, a comfortable job at ESPN to starting your own production company, that seems pretty daunting to most people. How did you even have the bravery to take that step?
In some ways, I think it has to do with talking to other people that are doing other things too. So, and getting an idea of what they've done and researching people that have done things you want to do, and then kind of emulating and mirroring what they've done. Right. And then with time too, at the time I was young enough and maybe even naive enough to all the things that it would take, which that actually helped me make that decision, because had I known enough of what it would take, possibly I would have said, I'm not going to do this, right? So to some extent, I think ignorance can be bliss in terms of making those decisions and taking that leap of faith.
Now, did you have any mentors that kind of somebody available who's more experienced to kind of lean on if you ran into problems?
I honestly, no. I heard that where the mentor is an asset and a tremendous asset. And I've had a mentor or two since, but yeah, I just, unfortunately I did not at that time. And then I looked for that person, but they may not come around. Sometimes, it's hard to necessarily get that. Some people have that chance. If you can have someone that's a mentor, it is tremendous. I've had people that I've worked with that I felt were kind of like mentor-ish, right? But no one that was dedicated, that was saying, look, I'm going to help you out, or this is, give me that advice. I just sort of had to learn on my own.
Okay. And what does your day look like nowadays with Smart Media?
So Smart Media on a daily basis, I am able to, what does my day look like? That's really interesting because it varies so much that it's even hard for me to think. But like, for example, I'm doing work right now. One of my big clients is Halo Sports and Entertainment, right? So they manage the Intuit Dome and deal with concerts or LA Clippers games, right? So I'm helping to facilitate putting together a training program for their arena hosts and tech hosts and what they call 310s, or their food and beverage people, to use these really fancy apps and game technology that helps identify fans going through and charging them and integrating that with the fan experience. So I'm actually putting together and working on the training and development. That's going to involve a lot of videos and a lot of e-learning. So there's a lot of project management, learning, and then sitting through concerts and watching how people do things and shadowing. That's a day with that one client. But then in addition, I'm also in the middle of production on several documentaries. So I'm working with editors that are managing them and taking in information and figuring out storylines and various stages of post-production as well. And then I work on this blog, which I have to manage and write and create. And I'm the main creative force behind it. So it's a balance of all those things plus taking care of a family.
Wow. And so your documentaries, those are being created to go somewhere? Like you still have to find a home for them, like Netflix or like, I don't know, or are they the end users already, it's hired you to put that together?
Yeah, these particular ones, the ones that I'm working on right now are not I have never had a problem with distribution, fortunately, knock on wood. I've always had distribution on all my projects. So when you do, and I've had some successes with them where I have 2 movies right now currently on Amazon. So like what happens is eventually when people know you and you see your work, it's easier to have relationships with distributors that have made money with you in the past to go back to them or to go back to other networks or things or production companies. And they know you have metrics, right? So you can go back to them and they're happy, open door policy to kind of take a look at what you have. You also have their ears for like what they're looking for or what the market wants. And it's a balance because I like to create what I want to do, right? I feel like in life it's too short. The real value, the real good stuff comes from when your heart is in it. The real good stuff comes from when, whether you were getting paid or not, you would do it and you'd be on it because that's where you're really it's really going to shine. And because there's such challenges to making a documentary, it takes a long time. I feel like, when I've been paid work for hire, it's not quite the same when it's something that I've come up with and I'm finding a home for it.
And what types of documentaries appeal to you?
So I like any kind of documentary that really pushes the envelope in terms of what is taboo or pushes the envelope in terms of what we believe is right or wrong. Because I believe we live in a very binary thinking society that tends to limit itself, tends to think it's this or that, or you either got to be Republican or Democrat, right? Or you've got to be pro-gun approach, for the opposite of it, anti-gun, I don't know, but there's many like nuances to things. And oftentimes, like if you think about even our own insurance policies, there are 80-20 policies, right? So like maybe you're 80% vegan, right? But maybe 20% of the time you choose to have fish or whatever. And I'll call you that vegan. So, and I feel like that's fine. I don't think we have to limit ourselves to an all or nothing ethical policy per se. I think the real world is far more nuanced and complicated. And so I like subjects that kind of address that or have opportunities to explore that. So therefore, the people watching it can start reflecting and thinking about their own life choices and whether they're limiting themselves or whether they're living a fulfilling life or not.
Okay, so you're hoping that by the end of the documentary, it's triggering some kind of a thought.
Most definitely. If anything, it will ask more questions of the audience and then have them kind of answer it for themselves with time.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk about corporatezombiesurvival.com. How did that come about?
So I have been a creative who's had to survive in a world where a lot of the people making decisions sometimes lack creativity. And when I say that is they may be able to identify something or have a finger on something, but they themselves will be so afraid of making a decision or maybe in a position where they feel they can't or they're afraid to make that decision or to invest in something that's really fresh. And so I've found myself trying to kind of work creatively within those constraints, right? To appeal to those folks, but yet do something that is in my heart's desire. And so I think a lot of creatives that kind of more focused on living that creative life than not struggle with that. And it's that balance in our society. How far do we go to be safe? How far do we go to push the envelope? And it's very prime. Like, would we be the first to pick that berry when we're starving as a tribe back in the day when we're Cro-Magnums, whatever, like the first person to eat the berries might have died, right? So to be too creative is dangerous. So this really is intrinsic in our nature for survival. And so I think Corporate Zombie was my way of being able to take a metaphor that's super popular today. I mean, the Walking Dead series is like 8 or 9 seasons in and all their spinoffs are like the same. They continue to go, Last of Us being like the newest rendition of that sort of season.
Sure.
Why are they continually popular? I think because they're a metaphor for our lives. And I think the lessons we're learning from them in the part that appeals and resonates with us has to do with the fact that we live in a very survivalistic society. And we often feel like the systems that we're constricted to are stealing and robbing us of our humanity. And we have to be like those tribe survivalists just to succeed and survive and thrive today. And so the blog is my way of trying to take that metaphor and learn from it and then help creatives be successful by putting the blood and guts on and blending in and walking amongst the horde, so to speak.
Okay. So would you say the people that are your main audience are entertainment people?
I would say that it's creatives, but I would say also new graduates who are having a hard time finding themselves in the new economy, landing that first job. How do they infiltrate the system, right? To be able to benefit the system. And also people just stuck in any kind of dead end job, not being able to get that next level. I actually recently released an article on retirement and don't let them leave you for dead. So there are people retiring. There's a whole article for people trying to evaluate their retirement strategy and their plan and help them to struggle. So it really runs the gamut in terms of a demographic. And I think it also crosses into many different industries. I think real estate could be one of them, but also medicine and law. There are corporate zombies in everything from education to entertainment. And so I think it's a wider demographic than that, but I think initially creatives and entertainment will definitely find their way towards it.
Okay, so people go to your site. Looks like you've got some really great videos giving people advice on survival. What else can they find on your site?
Yeah, so they can find articles from everything from, how do you identify a corporate zombie? How do you survive the AI revolution, right? So AI, there's a whole article on that and how companies, from the company perspective, who they want to hire, to the employees and what kind of positions they look for, how do you position yourself to survive this new AI revolution? How if you think AI is a product of humanity, we've created it, but it's not creative. Much like zombies can't procreate. They have to turn human beings into one of them to be able to, otherwise, if they actually turned every human being, they'd lose their food source, if you think about it. Because they cannot, you don't see zombies having sex and making baby zombies. Humans do that. Humans create, humans procreate, right? So AI can't create per se. It's highly creative in a sense that can derive from a lot of different things. And people who lack imagination will think it's creative and maybe see it as a threat. But those who are truly imaginative will leverage it as a tool and be able to move on and know that the human imagination is not that weak. It has a lot more to it. You might be stuck in thinking that it doesn't have more to it because you have to break out of that corporate zombie mold and find that creativity within.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people can benefit from that type of advice. I mean, the AI is just so current, and who knows, what's going to be next.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on one second. I'm getting an alert on my Siri thing. I don't know if you heard that, but it was distracting. Okay. All right. So reset. So yes, what were you saying?
I was saying that this topic that you have on AI is very current, and people in the business world are always there's always a new challenge. So AI is today, who knows what the next one, they'll invent something else. So we're always needing those skills to combat whatever the next thing's going to be.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's other articles that will be released on like learning to moan like them, right? Like the lexicon people use. Real estate agents have their own lexicon. Medicine has its own lexicon. Law has its own lexicon, right? And so we have to start to wonder, like when corporate buzzwords are being tossed around in any one of those industries, do we understand what the words actually mean? Or are we making assumptions? So that will, to really break those things down, oftentimes like that can help new people coming into an industry to understand what it means. But also, do they still mean the same thing given an ever-changing landscape of business? Given invasive new tools and ways to do things, do those things still mean the same in that new environment? So we have to constantly be changing and questioning. And one of the things corporate zombies really, really hate is change. If you think about it, like you watch the zombie movies, I mean, they're still shopping, but they're dead, right? So but that is how we are as corporate zombies. We keep doing the same thing, or we cling to the same patterns, or we use the same words because we really don't want to have to think about it. And part of that is also the need for speed. So if you notice through time, the zombies were slow, but now they're starting to become fast. I call them berserkers versus the sleepers. And those are the two extremes, right? If you don't, there's articles on my blog about if you're more like a sleeper, what that apathy does and how that can be detrimental to your business. If you're a real estate agent and you're a sleeper, are you not taking the new technology that's out there? Are you not leveraging Zillow? Are you putting your head in the sand and thinking, okay, no, we don't need that. Or are you using the cameras where people can virtually tour the houses? Are you getting the new data analytics and leads? Are you staying away from that because you fear it? These are all things that I think you have to be a balance between adapting and recognizing change, but also not trying to be ahead of the game and throw the cart down and win the race, killing the horse and everyone around, right? If you act like a berserker or move too fast, like I was going back to my analogy before, if you ate the berries first, you might risk dying. So maybe it was better to be second. So to observe and learn and then move and then be so there's a balance between moving too fast and a balancing between moving too slow that I go into more detail on my blog.
Okay. Back in the day, people used to work at the same company for the whole life.
Mhm.
And that's definitely seems to have changed a bit. And now maybe even they recommend job hopping a lot quicker. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah. In general, I would say the latter. I'd say companies are less and less loyal. They actually think in terms of quarters. You'll notice that there'll be a lot more jobs advertised. I have a whole article on ghost jobs. They're actually not necessarily real, half of them. They either know someone internally they want to put in, but they have to advertise it, or they're just making it look like they're growing for stockholders and they have no real intention of hiring people.
Mhm.
And this happens all the time, and it's a waste of a lot of people's time, right? But in general, when they have a job to do and they're understaffed because they don't want to hire, they'll hire contractors to fill certain roles, make it look good for the stocks, and then lay off in a quarter. And then now it looks like they're streamlined and for profit. And then they'll hire more and look like they're hiring. And they play these games. So knowing that about the corporate zombies, you have to be positioned so that you can take these little special tactical gigs and be, not worry about one loyalty to a company. It's like, that'd be like having one stake in the ground and the wind is blowing and that's your only shelter. You need to have a few stakes in the ground. And I would highly suggest thinking about it that way, being tactical. In terms of real estate agents almost always have the hustle. That a lot of them are actually actors or doing other things in their career, and they want that flexibility. Great, lean into that. Have more than one thing that gets you money and keeps you alive and surviving, because oftentimes those feed each other, right? So the connections you make or the tribe you build, I talk about, comes from those variations, and then therefore it makes you stronger in even the one thing you do.
Yeah. For people who are in jobs that are not necessarily steady, maybe they're seasonal, what do you recommend that they do to fill in those gaps when they might be unemployed? Like, is there a specific type of side gig that you think is best for people? Anything specific?
In general, the easy answer would be no. I think the question would be like, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What are you passionate about? Right? That would be my first thing. But realistically, I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for people centric kind of services where you're actually there and you're connecting in person that can't be taken away by AI, right? For everything from social work to personal training, potentially to massage, to all these things to yoga, a lot of these things where you're doing stuff with people in person, because that will not be replaceable easily with AI. And from a real estate perspective, you're actually meeting people, you're networking, you're doing things, right? In-person things are valuable and it won't be as replaceable. So I feel like a lot of the things that got underpaid in the past will actually have a new value in the future as people get better at it, and the cream of the crop will be more at a premium for those sort of things. And then these other jobs that are easily replaceable are not something you want to bank the future on. So,
Okay. And then you were mentioning how, a lot of these job postings are probably ghost job postings. And I think by sharing that information with people, maybe it's making some of them feel a little bit better about it because they probably felt really down that they've applied to all these positions that were probably ghost positions to begin with and didn't get them. But being that people in the job market are having to deal with that type of thing, is there any tricks to getting around it? Or what do you recommend people, to find jobs when they're against these ghost postings?
I would recommend you go to corporatezombisurvival.com and read the article where I kind of talk about a bunch of tactics, but I can kind of give you a couple of nuggets. I mean, in general, there's ways you can cross-reference that job with other sources to see how it's out there, and to see, you can also contact the people posting the job and to see the response. There's certain questions you can ask that would help you glean whether it's a legit one or if it's something that's new. Do they have a long relationship with them? What is the reason for the position? If it's for something that clearly is a need immediately that's going to potentially grow, that can give you some sense of longevity. But if it's something that doesn't have legs, then maybe it's not really that important, that much of a job. Is this company posting these things regularly? Do you see that same job pop up the next quarter as well? That's the question. That's another question. Is it something that they just keep recycling? There's a number of things that you can do. to kind of get that, understand. Another thing would be in the interview itself. If you get an interview for the position, certain questions you can ask to kind of glean whether it's legit or if it's something that they're just kind of going through the motions.
Okay. Well, excellent. So everybody listening should go to corporatezombiesurvival.com and check out all this great media that you've got out there to help people avoid becoming or getting taken over by corporate zombies themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And what else can they find besides, your website? Do you have anything else for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, on my website, I have a lot of the social media links and stuff, but if you search my name, Nicholas Tana, you can find everything from my books to my movies on Amazon. And I have currently a comedy horror movie called Hell's Kitty, which is on Amazon, which is great for Halloween coming up. And it was a very low budget project that I was able to do about trying to find love with a cat that was possessive and rumored to be possessed.
Okay.
And pretty much most of the 80s horror icons in it playing parodies of their roles. So you can find that. And so I've worked with some of the top talent in the horror world, and that also gave me a good purview and lens for the horrors of the corporate world.
Yeah. And are there any good documentaries that we should be looking out for as well?
Well, I'm working in production already. We Are Animals is one that I'm hoping gets finished in the next year or so, about animal rights.
Okay.
I'm working on one related to the medical world, Medi-Cal and Medicare and related to that field. I can't say too much on that, but I'm in the production, process of that, which is constantly evolving right now. And then there's one called Sticky, a self-love story currently on Amazon as well, which I'll let you go research and find out for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about where you live in LA. What's your neighborhood?
So currently live in Redondo Beach, California, which I love. I invested about a year ago, so that was huge for me to do that. It really is a place I can see being home for a long time. It has that beach community feel, yet it's close to a metropolis like Los Angeles, which also happens to be the mecca for entertainment. So that keeps me close in my field. And I love it. I love being close to the beach. I like the best of both worlds.
And how does it compare to any other neighborhoods you've been in the past?
Well, it has that beachy kind of feel. I call it like San Diego near LA, which probably is not fair to South Bay in itself because San Diego is its own thing, but it gives you a perspective. Like it has that beach town kind of community thing, but it's even more intimate than San Diego. Like I know the people that work at my Whole Foods I walk to. I know the people that work. It has one of the oldest scuba shops that's near my house too, the Dive and Surf. And I think it's from the 1950s. And yet the beaches and the restaurants and everything, it's just a great community. It's part of South Bay. So Manhattan Beach is also part of South Bay, and Hermosa Beach and Palos Verde and Torrance. And all of those towns are like 5 minutes away by electric bike, 10 minutes by walking. So it's like its own little hub. And I love it. And it's not too hard to get up to Santa Monica or LAX, the international airport. And so I don't know. I think it's got a magic, and I see it growing. And I feel like I've lived in Los Angeles and more in the East Side too. And I love it there too. It's a different vibe, but I think this has a balance between it's great for family, but it's also great for young people that want to just enjoy outdoor culture and get away from just the fighting for traffic and all the stuff that comes with an urban lifestyle, but be close enough to go out and have all that, if you want. So
are there any hidden gems that someone visiting should visit?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a foodie guy, so I love all the food places. There's a place called Edouard Dessert, which is it's like being in Paris. I mean, it's a real French bakery. Tommy Atticus is a great bakery as well. You'll see a theme. I tend to like bakeries. But then the pier in Redondo is classic. It's been in films. It's got that vintage classic vibe. It's something to definitely walk and see and experience. Hermosa has its own kind of pier too, which is worth seeing. And underneath Hermosa, I love for photographs. There's beautiful, you get the shade under there and you can walk to the beach. And I love that spot too. But there's quite a bit. PV has some great hikes and walking areas. It reminds me of the Amalfi Coast of Italy. I mean, when you look at the line up there. So I would say all of that and more.
Okay. And what's the best place to go for a date night?
There's a couple of restaurants that I really like. I mean, Love and Salt up in Manhattan Beach is really, really nice. And sometimes walking the pier, there's some good places there. But, Rolling Hills Estates has a mall in there. There's Sage Restaurant and a couple of places in there. It's really private. It almost feels like you've rented it. I feel like I'm surprised there's not more people there. And they have a cool little Regal movie theater, which is probably too empty. It feels like a retro movie. It's beautiful. And I love to kind of go to the movies and then go, get the dinner. And I feel like that's just a great little escape. Yet you're in this like woodsy rolling hills, like it's its own world. So that's another place I like to go.
Oh, amazing. So it sounds like you really recommend your neighborhood.
I do. Yeah. The neighborhood is great. And I'm finding new things all the time too. New things are popping up all the time, but it takes some time to walk along the pier too. It's just gorgeous. And it's, the sunsets are amazing.
Awesome. Well, Nicholas, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. And to those watching, of course, look for Nicholas at his website. What was it?
Yeah. CorporateZombieSurvival.com.
Very good. And to those of you watching, if you love this conversation and want more insider looks at people who are shaping Los Angeles, hit subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the show grow. And I'm Jason, and I'll see you next time on the LA Insider.
Thank you for tuning in to the LA Insider. I hope today's conversation gave you a deeper look into the people and neighborhoods that make Los Angeles so dynamic. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves LA just as much as you do. I'm Jason, and I'll be back next week with another inspiring guest and more stories from the heart of the city. Until then, stay curious, stay connected, and keep exploring LA.